Hey guys, so every year in preparation for middle grade March, I always like to hop on and make a middle grade recommendations video. For the last number of years, I've been sharing my favorite middle grade books that I've read in the last year. And truth be told, in the last year, I have not read a ton of great middle grade books. So what I thought I would do is share my ultimate favorite middle grade books, a couple of which I've read in this last year. I'll try to highlight those ones to let you know that I read them this last year, but for the most part, this is just a very great stack of middle grade books that I'm excited to share. So I don't have them separated by genre. I definitely like a hard-hitting middle grade, but some people seem to try to write hard-hitting middle grade and miss the mark. There's a few exceptions in here. Actually, they're actually all pretty hard-hitting. So kind of in no particular order, but this first one I want to start with because this last year my 12-year-old wrote a book called Lone Wolf, and the intention with this book was never for her to get it published. She wrote the story, and then I was like, let's get that like bound, printed for my mom and my mother-in-law. We'll do that for Mother's Day. Thought it'd be a cute little gift. And then I read this story and I was like, this is really good. Like, it's a short novella. It's a little less than 80 pages, but it is about this boy named Hugo who is in foster care. And you can, I don't know. I am definitely biased because obviously she's my daughter. She's 13 now. She wrote this at the age of 12. But I feel like you can tell that she's got a lot of stories in her. Like, I don't think this will be her last book she publishes. So we follow Hugo. Because it's so short, I don't want to say much. But honestly, I was in tears by the end, and if a book can do that to me, like, that's pretty much automatically a 5-star. I'm very impressed. I didn't know she could write so well until I read this story, so it's gonna be the first one I recommend. And I read it this last year because she just wrote it this last year. I actually have quite a few different books in here that have to do with foster care. So the next one I'll mention is Pictures of Hollis Woods by Patricia Riley Giff. This one is about a girl named Hollis Woods. She's been to a bunch of different foster homes. I feel like I've read that premise in a number of different books, but very often it doesn't come off properly, but it does in this one. So in this one, Hollis goes to live with this elderly woman, Josie. She is elderly and quirky and affectionate and just everything that Hollis needs, but Josie seems to be like starting the road to like dementia or Alzheimer's or something. So both Josie and Hollis don't want social services to realize this because then Hollis will get taken away. And yeah, also another short book. This one's like 165 pages. Really enjoyed this. I enjoyed them all. That's why they're on my like favorites lists. This next one doesn't really have to do with foster care, but it has to do with a boy who goes and lives with his aunt and uncle. So this is Closer to Nowhere by Ellen Hopkins. So we follow two main characters in here. We've got Hannah and Calvin. So Calvin has gone to live with Hannah, his cousin, and his aunt and uncle. His mother has just passed away from cancer. His father is in jail. And it is a free verse novel with each chapter alternating between Hannah and Calvin. And so Calvin has been a bit of a liar. He's had a hard upbringing. So his chapters always start with fact or fiction. Like, fact or fiction, I once lived in a cave. Hannah is kind of the perfect girl, or so Calvin thinks, the perfect daughter, the perfect everything in school. Hers always start with definitions. So this one is definition of intervene, get involved. And so yeah, it looks kind of like a thicker book, but it is free verse, so it reads quite easily, quite quickly. And this one really, I liked the balance between Calvin and Hannah and seeing what they thought of each other, but how they each had their own struggles that the other one was kind of unaware of or didn't realize so much. This one will hopefully get you where it hurts as well. I have a few favorite middle grade books that I don't own. I'm going to go through those next, otherwise I will forget about them. So the first one I'm going to mention is Ode to a Nobody. This one is also free verse, and this has to do with, we follow a girl, I think she's maybe like grade 7. She's kind of realizing that her best friend is a bit of a jerk. She's going through a lot of hard stuff, like kind of like a transition year, and at the same time her town is hit by a tornado. This has such a gorgeous cover. I love the cover, and the book, it was kind of, I read it on a whim. I'd never heard of the author before, but I decided to take a chance on it, and it became one of my favorites. It's another one where I love seeing like preteen, early teen kids really, not really struggling. I don't really like to see them struggle, but I like to see them go through struggles and come out stronger, and I feel like this one was really good for that. The other one that I don't own is Echo. So I've listened to this one on audio, and I would highly recommend it on audio. It starts out with a little bit of a magic element with these like fairies or something living in a cottage. But then what the actual story is, we follow a couple different kids at different points in the past, and there is like this magical harmonica that weaves through. It's part of each of their stories. So it's been years since I've read it, but I know we follow a boy during World War II. We follow some kids in the US. I can't remember what the time period is there, but like we follow kids throughout these different times in history, and I like the historical fiction aspect. Not only are we in historic like World War II, which sometimes has been overdone, but we're also at these other points learning about other things, and then just how music and this harmonica kind of help them through their hard time. If you listen to it on audio, they've got some music going in the background and stuff, and it really adds to the story. My first book that made me fall in love with middle grade as an adult was Rain Rain by Anne M. Martin. She's the author of The Babysitter's Club, but this book is much deeper than that. So we follow Rose. She has Asperger's. Does she? What does she have? She has something, and she's obsessed with homonyms, and she's very big into routines. But one day her dog Rain I think he gets out, but there's a storm, and so she has to decide if she wants to stick to her routines and life as she knows it, or if she wants to go out and look for him. And yeah, this is the first one that taught me that like middle grade can be deep. It doesn't all just have to be Babysitter's Club level. One of my favorite middle grade historical fiction books is A Night Divided. This one we follow a family that the night the Berlin Wall goes up, they're actually split. Half of them are on one side, half of them are on the other. So the whole story is we follow a girl named Gerda, and pretty much her and her family that's on one side are trying to get to the other side of the wall. And the Berlin Wall, that whole time period, is something I haven't read a ton about, so I love that this was taking place at a different point in history. I was learning history, I was feeling empathy for this family. Definitely recommend it. This next one is different than all my others on the stack. This is a fantastical historical fiction. It's historical fiction with a bit of a fantastical element. I guess maybe it's magic realism, but I really don't like magic realism, so I'm not going to say that. So this is Sweep, the Story of a Girl and Her Monster by Jonathan Auxier, and this is the story of a chimney sweep who has been an orphan all her life, and I think she works for a chimney sweep. His name is Wilkie Crud. Her name is Sparrow, and she has this friend, this coal friend monster golem type thing. So that's where like the magic comes in. But this was such a good look at the life of chimney sweeps, and I teared up when I read it. Then I was like, my family, we have to listen to this on audio together. We went through it on audio and I teared up again. Definitely one that I like to keep and make my kids keep reading, and just keep reading it over again. Another one we listen to together as a family is Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. This is like present day. We follow Avon Green. She was born without arms and was adopted, and this book it's like her life without arms, but that sounds kind of hard and deep which it is, but she also, whenever people ask her like what happened to her arms, she'll often like make up silly stories like, oh, I lost a fight with an alligator or whatever, like something crazy. So it's laugh out loud funny, but then also hits you. This book, it's a duology. In the first one, her family has just moved to Arizona. They are taking over a Stagecoach Pass. It's a rundown Western theme park. And so she has to leave everything that she's known, start at a new school, and get to know different people. And yeah, we all really enjoyed it. One of my favorite middle grade historical fiction, another one, I guess, and there's one more yet, is A Place to Hang the Moon. If you like Chronicles of Narnia, like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe almost made it onto my list here, but I feel like it's kind of in a world of its own. But this one is inspired by Narnia. If Lucy, Peter, Edmund, and Susan had never like entered Narnia, but they were just children that were sent off during World War II, that's what this story is. So we follow 3 siblings who they are orphaned right at the beginning of the story or before the story, but they've come into a lot of money. Their grandmother has left them a lot of money. But their lawyer says, since it's World War II, since we're sending kids out to the country, go to the country. If you find a family that you really like, then you can tell them later that you actually have a lot of money. But don't tell people that you have a lot of money to begin with, otherwise, you know, they might kind of use you. So these kids, they go and they billet with a family. And the story unfolds. There are themes of a library and hot cocoa and being cozy on a warm, snowy day. There's hard moments. But I love this book. I should have reread it this winter, like beginning of December is the perfect time, I think. I'm gonna reread it next year. And then my last, the other ones are kind of historical fiction too, but this is the last official historical fiction, is The Lost Year. So in this one, we follow 3 cousins in 1930, as well as a boy in 2020. So the boy in 2020, his name is Matthew. He is in the middle of the COVID pandemic. He lives with his mother and great-grandmother, and his great-grandmother is one of the cousins we follow in 1930. His chapters are hilarious. Like my kids, we listened to this one as well. We were laughing, but then there's like moments where, you know, like a person is really choked up. So in 1930, we're following these 3 cousins. 2 of them live in Ukraine during the Ukrainian famine. One is in New York trying to get her cousins to come over. And I won't say more than that. It's really good. The audio was great. Yeah, it kind of broke my heart though, in a mostly good way. Okay, and then the last 2, these are some of my absolute favorites, they're companion novels. So we've got The Wednesday Wars and Okay for Now. If you've watched a few of my videos, I feel like I've probably talked about these before. I say read The Wednesday Wars first, then Okay for Now. And then Gary D. Schmidt did end up writing a companion novel called Just Like That. I don't like that book. Our main character from here has died in a car crash between this book and that book, and I feel like that was uncalled for. It was unnecessary. I don't like that. I want Hauling Hood from this book to live forever. And then this last year, he wrote or released The Labors of Hercules Beale, where we have some characters from here that show up in there just like 20 years later. So the Wednesday Wars were set during the Vietnam War, and our main character, Hauling Hood, one of my absolute favorite names for a character, is starting 7th grade, and he's convinced his teacher hates him. There are themes of Shakespeare and bullying and perseverance and like so many good themes. The audiobook is amazing. This book, we follow Doug Switek. So he is a bit of a bully in this book, and so I think it's best to read this book first so that it makes more sense. In Okay for Now, we are 1968, so we're the summer after this book, and we follow Doug Switek. They are gone somewhere. Oh, did he move? He's in a new place for the summer, and he goes to the library, and he comes across the some Audubon pictures or the book, and he gets kind of obsessed with it and trying to save the pictures from the library. It's been a while since I read this one, but this one does have pictures in it, which is kind of cool. And kind of the same themes throughout this book as this one. We've got bullying, we've got perseverance, and yeah, I love how Gary D. Schmidt just pulls in these other elements. Like this one makes me want to read Shakespeare. This one makes me want to learn more about the Audubon Book of American Birds or whatever it was. And then The Labors of Hercules Beale made me want to study Greek mythology. I highly recommend these two plus The Labors of Hercules Beale. Just Like That is very, very different, I think. I personally, if you want to read it, go ahead. I personally think it shouldn't exist. Mostly because Hollinghood dies, but also I just didn't feel like that book lived up to the other ones. So that is a roundup of my favorite books from, well, my favorite middle grade books overall. The Lost Year I read in 2023, as well as, I think I read Closer to Nowhere as well, and then Lone Wolf. Pretty sure those are my only new books that made this list. I did read some other good middle grade books in 2023, but not very many at all. Like after middle grade March, I barely read any middle grade books. So I'm hoping that this year is better in the middle grade realm. If you guys have suggestions for me for middle grade March, let me know in the comments and let me know some of your absolute favorite middle grade books. Thanks for hanging out with me today.